Good morning, Nancy. It's so good to see you. Good morning. All right, I asked for permission to show this picture. This is our topic for the day, detox from distraction. And the reason why I got permission, this is my daughter when she was little, and we actually homeschooled, and they're mostly normal, so don't judge. But we had a substitute teacher that day. I wasn't there. And she just was, I think it was math she was trying to get through and she couldn't focus. So she put the cone on. So, I mean, that's one strategy. So, there you go. Good morning, Ben. It's good to see you. Couple of things I just wanted to share with you guys because I know you've been with me this journey of the book and we're getting so much closer. I just wanted to kind of give you behind the scenes of where we are. Everything went to layout last week, and that's after the edit and 2 rounds of proofreading and whew, so hours and hours of working on layout last week, and I'm so excited about that. But here's the big news that I'm over the moon excited about, which is on October the 9th, it's going to be on the Times Square in New York on the big marquee. So, uh, I mean, it'll probably flash up there for maybe 10 seconds, but it's going to loop for 24 hours. So if you add all that time together, it adds up. I don't really do a lot of math, but you can do it in your head. So, one thing I wanted to share with you guys is if you could save the date for December the 5th, thank you, Ben. I appreciate that. What I'm planning on doing is like running out really quick when they take the picture and then, trying to get a shot of it. So December the 5th, we're going to be back together in Dallas. It's going to be in person. This is going to be a launch and a party, and it's on a Friday. And I know it is December, but I'm hoping that we've caught it before all the holiday parties start. Plus, I promise you'll be out by the time you have a holiday party, if you do have one for December the 5th. And if you have a party and you're looking to invite people, well, just let us know. All right, we'd love to be there. So, in this year, we've been looking at the different strategies that are covered in the book, but it's also what I've been teaching on for the last 30 years, finally just captured in a way that hopefully will be really, really useful for people that are leaders at all levels and at different seasons of your life, because I really do believe this is the school you never graduate from. There's no done until you're completely done. And different strategies we focused on each time. The interesting thing is today's topic hits so many of these strategies. I would say it lands mostly in the action strategy because the action strategy is around working with the brain's limitations. Like, our brain does so many things for us, absolutely, and it's miraculous and marvelous and all the things. Hi, Isabel. So good to see you. But it also has severe limitations. And so, what we want to do is work with that. And the idea is that we really can get better results with less effort. I'm a big fan of this idea of leader worth following. And I really believe that leaders worth following, first and foremost, know how to manage themselves. And then we learn a lot of different strategies on how to have better conversations, how to plan better with the people that we have the privilege of leading. And today's largely around better managing yourself. So I want to leave you with some strategies around it. But first, let's talk about distractions. And I just thought it was interesting to read some of the 2025 studies around distractions. It kind of blows me away a little bit. So, that 79% of US workers report that they get distracted within an hour of coming to work. 59% saying the first 30 minutes. Uh, and when you think about waking up in the morning with this precious commodity called your energy and your brain reserve, it automatically starts getting stripped away so quickly. And the other part of that is when you realize like the real product every single person in this group is producing are your ideas, your thoughts, the things that are fueled by that precious energy and reserve. The average adult checks email 36 times an hour. That blew me away a little bit. Some of you are thinking, no way, I only check it, on the weekends. Maybe at lunch and at the end of the day, but I just thought that was interesting that we are checking our phones about 58 times a day. So at first I thought there's no way. But if you have left your phone at home recently, you might realize that might be pretty accurate because we did that. I was gone for the day with my mom and I forgot my phone, which is kind of a big deal because that's where all my credit cards are too. So I left everything at home that day and it was phenomenal how many times I checked email. And you can, imagine the impact that this has on productivity and the costs associated with it. The thing is, they're invisible costs and we don't account for the drag. And this is why it's so important to constantly be developing your people, developing your leaders, especially. Again, there's no done. It's sort of like if you ever lost weight, you're not just done after that, it's maintenance after it, any change that you've made. So, those are just some of the distraction realities. And, when I think about what's happening in your brain, it's sort of like the spinning wheel of death. So let's think about it. You wake up with a brain reserve energy. I don't have an aura ring, but those of the people I work with who do say you have a readiness score in the morning. You know, so some of us are already operating on low battery. Let's say you didn't get a good night's sleep or you had a lot of things on your mind. But we're going to enter this wheel here. And then when the distractions come, we think we can multitask. Well, your brain really can't. What's happening is it's switching really quickly back and forth with tasks. But there's a cost in that switching. It's draining that energy. And what happens is errors go up and productivity goes down. That, it's proven. I mean, there's so many solid studies now that your brain really can't multitask and you're actually increasing errors and decreasing productivity. And it's funny to me that we still have this on job descriptions, even though we know that it is impossible to do. So let's keep going around this wheel. So now we got to devote more attention to this task switching. When we start to see errors, that also triggers our brain to be more hyper focused on detecting errors and making sure that we get it correct. And for those of us on disc who are low on C to begin with, even harder because we're never going to be good at that. It's not that we can't, but it's never going to come naturally for us. So then our brain starts working harder and faster. Now we're talking chemicals. It is accelerating adrenaline, which is addictive, and it's also accelerating cortisol, which we all know is the stress hormone. Now, this is a fascinating fact that once cortisol is triggered, it can take up to 90 minutes for it to go back to base level. And so when you imagine all the stressors that are hitting you, there's a reason why we're sick. There's a reason why 80 to 85% of our medical expenditures today are stress related because it never returns. It's one thing after another. So going back into this spinning wheel of death is while these chemicals increase, it's going to impact the part of your brain that allows you to monitor emotional responses, to make better decisions, to think ahead, to manage distractions. And so if you're feeling it right now, just what it feels like to be on this spinning wheel of death, it absolutely does. And so I just think the scariest part of all of it, this is to me the scariest part of all of it, is this starts to feel normal. It starts to feel familiar. And you know you've been addicted to the spinning wheel of death when, let's say, you do take a day off or you are on vacation. And now that feels really uncomfortable because you've been used to all of these things coming at you at once. If you're relating to that right now, uh, yep, Nancy, it's so true. That is normal. It starts to feel familiar. And I think that's probably when we should be afraid, when things start to feel a little too familiar. So there's a book that I wanted to share with you. It's been out for a while. It looks like he's released a new version of it. I have I have the old version with all the folded corners and coffee stains on it. But Richard Swenson is a physician, and he wrote this book, Margin, and he's really comparing it to add a little margin back into your life and see if you don't come alive again. You have ideas. You're more fun to be with. You got lower stress. And this is what he writes about this idea of all of these distractions. Now, the interesting thing is he wrote this book in the early 80s. So I'm curious to see what he puts into his latest version. But he talks about a physician in the 19th century, and his name was Ignace Philippe Semmelweis. How about that for a name? But he says that he was an obstetrical physician. So what he was doing is he was working on, helping deliver babies and such. And so I'm just actually going to do story time with you for a minute and read from this because it's so well described. So many of his obstetrical patients in Vienna were dying of postpartum infections. He was puzzled and deeply disturbed. We're happy about that. Finally, an observation struck him. The mothers who developed the fever and died were the same ones being examined by physicians just returning from performing autopsies on recently deceased victims. It appeared something was being carried from the morgue to the postpartum ward and was killing patients. He had all the doctors under his authority begin watching lines. What an exciting discovery! The beginnings of a secret had been unlocked and lives were saved. Semmelweis told his other colleagues and suggested that they too wash their hands following autopsies. But the response was brutal. How could physicians' hands carry invisible agents of death? Semmelweis was scorned and rejected, and he ended his days prematurely in what then was called an insane asylum. Meanwhile, mothers continued to die. Shortly thereafter, Pasteur and Lister proved the existence and contagiousness of microbes, and only then was the Austrian surgeon vindicated. And he goes on to say that overload, limits, distractions, these two are invisible killers. He said, I see the carnage in my friends, in my community, in my church, in my work, and in my own life. I see the damage in our nation and in the world, yet we have no shortage of scorners who say, you can multitask. Life is no different than it used to be. We all have distractions and tasks that we have to accomplish. And he says, trapped in a paradigm that wears blinders, we continue to strain under the load. Finally, inevitably, someday, we will understand, but in the meantime, oh, what needless pain we bear. It's just a beautiful way of talking about really the impact of distraction. And I wanted to dive into this idea of what if, what if we could detox? So if you've been with us for a while, you've seen a model or some version of this. I think this is, as a friend of mine would say, this is the money slide. And it's the reason why I believe that the work that we do really is so transformational because it feels natural if we want a different result to just shift our actions. And yes, we have to do that, but changing actions alone is not going to lead to sustainable results. So let's think about managing distractions. There is no shortage of actions available. Right now, we could go around the room and we could say, what do you need to do to manage distractions? And we're probably going to hear, uh, mark out time on your calendar, right? Or we're probably going to hear, go offline, or we're probably maybe hear, put a cone around your head, as you saw. There's no shortage of books on this, podcasts on this, Google it. Now we have AI. You're going to get millions of actions. But what if the solution to this wasn't about actions? Because if actions were the problem, then if actions were the solution, then we wouldn't still have a problem. And what I want to propose is that the solution is never at the action level. It's always at the belief level. We got to dig into what is the belief that's driving that action, that's driving that result. And just whether it's distractions or you have a team member right now and you're thinking they're not producing the result that I want, or they could do even better. I really want you to dig into that, like really thinking about what is the belief that has to change. Because if we can shift beliefs, it's so much easier to shift actions, so much easier to shift results. So, anyway, I get pretty excited about that because, when you think about so many of the things that we do for our team members, our employees, um, and many of those are good, like we buy tickets for them to different things, or we buy them swag, or spiritware, and all those things are really good. But really, the greatest thing we can do for people is challenge beliefs and help shift beliefs. To me, that's why it's so important to have constant development, because one new belief can completely transform your life. Think about it. Just shaking up one new belief or offering one new belief opens up a flood of new possibilities that may not have ever existed before. So I want to offer a belief shift because, again, if actions were the solution, we wouldn't still have these problems. There is no lack of action that's available to us. I really want to challenge a belief because what if we reframed distractions? What if distraction was actually not something to be avoided, but it was the secret to breakthrough? Because what if that stress that you feel when you're in that spinning wheel of death, what if that was actually your body's signal to redirect? So let's talk about brain systems for a minute, because there's many ways to talk about the brain, and you guys have heard us talk a lot about the three big deals. That's a great way to start talking about how the brain receives and processes information. But we could also talk about the brain in terms of brain systems. And most of us believe there are about 5 or 6 different brain systems, but I wanted to talk about 2 in particular. One of those is what we call the executive control network. So here are just some things. This is usually what we're doing when we are trying to focus on all the tasks. This is very task driven. It's anchored in the prefrontal cortex. It's the part that's it's activating beta brain waves, which is the very active, focus, pay attention network in your brain. So this is what's we're relying on when we are engaged in all of those demanding tasks that's demanding our attention. There's another interesting network in your brain called the default mode network. Now, it's also taps into the prefrontal cortex, but it's anchored largely in the limbic system. So more that emotional part of your brain. This is the system that's supporting imagination, creativity, future planning. When we're daydreaming, it's when we take a break. We activate the default mode network. It's shifting actually brain waves. So we're moving more into that alpha and theta, which is kind of that daydreaming or right before you go to sleep when you back away. So interesting networks. So let's go with this for just a second. Back to the spinning wheel of death, because I want to share with you some really practical ways to activate that default network and walk you through an exercise. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it in time. Okay, so when we lock into that executive control network for too long, your brain tires. So here's all the things that you're going to start seeing and feeling. You're going to have a hard time paying attention. You might be more irritable. Your errors go up, your creativity goes down. There's a lot of noise. This is where we can hit overwhelm and you start to feel stuck. So we want to think about how do we get out of it? So if we're feeling that all that distraction, what I want you to really dial into, at least give it a try. This is called a leading lab for a reason. Go do some experiments and see if it helps you. So, how to exit the distraction wheel of death. First of all, notice that this is your brain's cue. It's like anxiety is not necessarily a bad thing. It means your body and your brain are doing what it's supposed to do. It's giving you a cue. This is your brain's cue to activate a different network, to shift networks, to maybe daydream with purpose. So, okay, you guys ready? So, I'm going to give you some really practical ways that you might be able to do that. One, super easy, rub your hands together. I know it's just, there's some really cool science behind it. But when you find yourself in that spinning wheel of death and you're experiencing all of those symptoms, just rub your hands together because it's a signal we're shifting networks. So that's one idea. And so I just threw that in for free. Here's the ones though that I pulled out. One is this idea to activate the default mode network is box breathing. So you might have seen this before where you're going to inhale like from your stomach, not from your shoulders. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. That alone increases oxygen, increases blood flow to your brain enough to redirect a different network. So, rubbing your hands together, box breathing. Here's a few more. Stand and stretch. Standing for 10 to 15 minutes is accelerating oxygen blood flow to your brain. So, what that's doing is it's leveling out those chemicals, it's bringing the prefrontal cortex back online. Move. Uh, that might mean go refill your water bottle. Okay, so move. It might mean you'll all relate to this. It might mean get up and go to the restroom. I mean, if you've ever had those days where you're like, oh my gosh, I've been so in this tunnel of multitasking, I haven't even had any water, hadn't even gone to the bathroom. We've all done that, just those back to back to back tasks and meetings. The other way, other idea is think forward with future focused questions. So, for example, if I'm in that spin and I'm getting out of that spin, just start asking, what's the end goal? Or what next step leads to the best possible outcome? Or what will winning look like in the next 30 minutes? So I had that happen yesterday, a quick story, and then we're moving into an exercise. But I've had this idea of redoing our garage. It's one of 1,000 ideas I have in my head right now. And we were standing out there, Lance and I are looking at it, and I mean, I'm in the zone. And he says, what exactly would that look like? It was a great future focused question. It activates that default mode network. So now I want to take you through an exercise. Okay, so you're going to need, if you're driving, you get a pass. But if you've got paper, you got a pen. Because another way that is so powerful that we don't do, it's going to feel kind of weird actually, to activate the default mode network is to use visuals or imagery to help us get out of the tiring of being in that executive network. So, I want you to think for a moment about a real situation in your life right now where you feel stuck, where you're looking for a solution. So the challenge is there, like, how do I get through this? How do I get over it? Or maybe you're unsure of how to move forward. So, something in your life, as I ask on a lot of coaching calls, that's taking up a lot of real estate in your brain, or it just feels heavy right now. And I just want to invite you to either close your eyes or look down, just like go into a space of imagination and notice what this feels like and what's an image that captures this challenge. And I want you to draw out the image. And there are no drawing skills required. Okay, so you're the only one seeing it. But when you think about that challenge, that block where you're stuck, how would you draw that? And then I'm going to move you to step 2 in this exercise. I want you to visualize success. So picture what winning, picture what success would look like if this challenge were resolved. And I'd like for you to draw a visual of that. The possibilities, the clarity, the achievement. Okay, so step 3. Under that first visual, I want you to write stuck. And under that second visual, I want you to write success. And now step 4. Create a new visual. I want you to create, this is the final one, okay, I promise. I want you to create a visual that shows the path, that captures an action or a belief that closes the gap. A visual that represents what will get you there. So this default mode network is largely around this idea of stepping back instead of powering through, pulling over. We don't do this very often. I mean, we get into a world of spreadsheets and numbers and all of those things, and that's great. But don't forget that, especially when you think about leadership and being a visionary and strategy, giving yourself space to visualize what that is and leveraging the power of images. We just don't do that very often. I mean, how many times have you been in a meeting recently where some where somebody was drawing stick figures, to capture it? But it's a powerful exercise. So I did this recently, and I'd love to have a volunteer in just a minute, if you don't mind sharing with us the visuals that you just did. If somebody had something, I'll tell you mine. I went through this recently, and the visual where I was stuck, I just drew a wall, and this little stick figure behind this wall, and I couldn't see over it or around it or through it. Just had this wall. Then when I visualized success on the other side of that wall were the things that I was looking for. It was people, it was ease, it was a pot of gold, like all those things. And then when I moved to that third step, that was pretty powerful for me because what I drew was that the wall was like a partition with wheels, and I just drew a little stick figure, just push it out of the way. It wasn't brick. It was something I could just push out of the way, and it gave me exactly what I needed because your brain, we've talked a lot about, resist confusion. It gets overwhelmed easily. How's the way out of that? It's clarity. And sometimes all you need is enough clarity for that next step. So, would somebody be willing to volunteer and walk us through your visual?
I will.
Thank you.
So
Thank
this is kind of personal though, and actually my first picture, I'm stuck. I have a 26-year-old, and our relationship has shifted a little bit, and so the success looks like we can, build that relationship again. I mean, just simple things, the text that no longer gets to my phone, or it just says good morning and it doesn't say good morning, mama.
you.
And so the third picture is I have to break every chain that has taken away my son from understanding that our bond, regardless of the age, we're always going to be bonded. And so I have to take that out of my head and remember every day that even though he doesn't say good morning, mama, he still loves me and I still love him.
Yeah.
And so I love the way you said resist confusion, because if I go a little bit spiritual, this is more like, in the darkness that's working. And so I want to change that. And I wake up every day with that void, with that heaviness. And actually, work is my escape. So this is, happening at home. But yeah, that's what I did. Thank you for that exercise, because I have to be somewhere right now for a training, but this was very, very, very right timing for me. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so, because the questions is just really stepping back and thinking about what did this show me? Notice what you notice. And thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that very much. Anybody else?
So, Sherry, I don't know if you remember our friend Veronica Cochran. Years and years ago, she shared with me this sort of vision of where she was, and I was struggling to try to create this. I first saw a wall as well, but I immediately went to this vision of you're going down the path and there's a forest. You hit this forest and you can't see into it. You can't see, it's dark. It's just looks like a thicket. You don't know how you're going to get through it. But in her mind, in her vision, she's like, I could see the path to, and I could see the forest, and I could see the path out of. But the forest was, I couldn't see through the forest. And so as you challenged, I was like, okay, everything I want is on the other side of this forest. And as what I thought is, what do I need to get through this forest? Well, I just need a compass to make sure that I'm still heading in the direction of the path. And then as I encounter a tree, there's a way around every tree. I just have to stay the course through the forest. That was sort of my visual of all of that. And I've got several things coming up that I don't even know all about. I can't fully see them, but they're scary. They're scaring me. And I was like, okay, Cody, you're just going to take one tree at a time. You're just going to stay on
Mhm.
course through this forest because there's a way out. And on the other side is all this stuff. It's not that big a deal. And when you're looking down into the forest, you can see, it's when you're in the forest that you can't see around. So anyway, that was my
Thank
crazy
you.
visual. You asked me to
That's
be
good.
creative, so there you were.
Yeah. We just don't rely on that very often. It's and when you look at brain science and especially this default mode network, it's one of the things that gets shut down, right? Because for some reason we assign taking a break or stepping back or visualizing or drawing as unnecessary or it's I don't know, it's not task related, but that's the very thing that often needs to happen. Anybody else? We've got just a couple of minutes. Leaders go first.
All right, Sherry, I'll share.
Thank you, Zaida.
So my first image is an image of a circle and a square side by side. And the circle represents just the world, and the square represents my son. So my son was diagnosed as a young adult having autism, and so all of his life we've been trying to figure out, how his place in the world, how to make him function, all those things. So this is just like very fresh and recent for us. So then the second one was the circle and the square peg inside, which is really what society and world education has always tried to put him, this round square peg in a round hole. And so then the success is that it's the square and the circle inside. So he's the square peg, but now his placement is different. And success is just really finding his place. And we really can't make him fit into that circle, that, square peg in a round hole, but that it, is really about him finding his way now that he's an adult and now that we know a lot more about him. And so it's just about the placement and just kind of us as parents understanding that the placement is all is it
Mm.
needs to be in the right place.
Thank you. Thank you. Just think about how you can use this for challenges that you're experiencing, blocks, or even how you could bring this to your team. They may think you're a little strange, but that's okay. Like, new is good, okay? Just because it's unfamiliar, maybe that's the thing. Like, we've just never seen it before. We talk a lot about, you've heard this your whole life. Picture's worth 1,000 words, but it's also worth 1,000 feelings and 1,000 meanings. And it can also help a group get to clarity so much faster when there's a great deal of confusion. And I know that we're all, experiencing that in different ways. I know we've got so many different industries represented here from, construction to oil and gas to healthcare to education. But the reality is those challenges, they're just going to look a little bit different. But at the root of it, It is maybe sometimes it isn't about powering through. Thank you, Callie, for letting me use this one more time. But when we feel the weight of that spinning wheel of death, that maybe it's not about powering through. Let's pull over, right? And trust that we got these amazing brains, and there's a part of it like this idea of visualization we don't often use as an amazing tool to manage the errors that come with all of the multitasking and the distractions. So thank you guys for being here. I'll tell you what. So next month, we're going to be looking at the mosaic strategy. There will be no art involved, but we're talking about, I've got a special guest that's coming on to talk about the Enneagram specifically. I think you'll find it fascinating, but we'll be talking about that strategy next month. But in the meantime, I always say this is the only thing I know how to do. So let me do it. If there's any way that we can support you individually or your team, that's what we get up every single day to do. So just let us know if there's any way we can support you. And in the meantime,
Sherry, can you go back to the
yes,
steps slide?
say that again.
Can you go back to the steps,
Yes, I can.
right there? Is that what you needed, Zaida? Okay.
Yes. And the one at the beginning is just something as simple as this. And if you find that tension and that the pressure to get it right, all those things in the next meeting you're in, it just allows you to kind of remember that I can switch to a different network for a little while. Thank you guys for being here today. I appreciate it. Thanks for those of you who watch this recording. Let us know how we can support you, and let's just do our best to go out there and be leaders worth following. And I'll see you guys here next month. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry.